17 years old, a boy from a quiet shoemaking town in Brazil did something that nobody had managed since Neymar. Before his 18th birthday, he had already racked up more than 30 goal involvements at senior level, goals and assists stacked up like he was playing a video game on the easiest difficulty. But this was not a video game. This was Brazilian top-flight football, one of the most ruthless proving grounds on the planet, where a new next big thing is crowned every 6 months and almost every single one of them vanishes without a trace. He stands 5'6". He weighs less than most of the defenders he leaves sitting on the grass, and yet grown men, professional internationals, keep ending up on the wrong side of his left foot. This is the story of Estevao Willian, the teenager they call Messinho, Little Messi. And here is the strange part, even the people who hate that nickname cannot stop using it. Here is something to hold on to because we are coming back to it. In the summer of 2025, at a major club tournament in the United States, Estevao lined up against Chelsea, the exact club he was about to join. He had already signed. They had already paid. He could have coasted. Instead, he scored a goal from an angle so tight the goalkeeper barely had room to react. And after the final whistle, one of the best young players in England walked straight over to him. What that player said next tells you everything about how good this kid actually is. But to understand that moment, you have to go back to a small city called Franca and to a nickname that landed on his shoulders when he was 10 years old. Let us put the numbers in perspective first because they sound invented. In the Champions League, the biggest club competition on earth, only 3 teenagers in history have scored in each of their first 3 starts. The first was Erling Haaland, the goal machine who now terrifies the Premier League. The second was Kylian Mbappé, a World Cup winner before he was old enough to rent a car in some countries. The third name on that list is Estevao. And before he even reached Europe in his breakout season at Palmeiras, he produced 13 goals and 9 assists in just 31 appearances. Read that again. A boy who could not yet legally drive in most of Europe was out producing seasoned professionals twice his age and doing it for one of the giants of South American football. Numbers like that do not make you a prospect. They make you a problem that the whole continent has to plan around. And there is one name in those record books that cuts deeper than any nickname. Before Estevao, the last teenager to collect more than 30 senior goal involvements before turning 18 in Brazilian football was Neymar himself, once the most expensive player the world had ever seen, a Champions League winner, a global icon. That is the company this kid is keeping, not in clickbait headlines, but in the cold, unforgiving statistics. His youth coach Sampaio once tried to explain what made him special, and even he struggled to find the words. "The controls he makes are incredible," Sampaio said, "and his speed with the ball is amazing." By the time he was still a teenager, Estevao had already been called up to the senior Brazil national side, the 5-time world champions, sharing a dressing room with players he had grown up watching on a television screen. Estevao was born in April 2007 in Franca, a city in the state of São Paulo that is far better known for shoes and basketball than for producing the future of world football. His father had been a goalkeeper, so the game lived in the house from the very beginning. The language of football was his first language. At just 10 years old in 2017, he was picked up by Cruzeiro, one of Brazil's traditional giants, and it was there on the youth pitches of Belo Horizonte that the nickname was born. The coaches watched this tiny left-footer drift past bigger, stronger boys with the ball seemingly glued to his boot, and somebody muttered the word that would haunt and follow him for the rest of his life, Messinho. One of his youth coaches later told a story that says it all. A club photographer once took a sequence of 100 photos of Estevao running with the ball at speed. In every single frame, all 100, the ball was still stuck to his left foot. That is not something a coach can teach. That is something you are simply born with. To grasp how badly Europe wanted him, look at the bidding war he set off. Estevao grew up dreaming of Barcelona, a fitting dream for a boy nicknamed after their greatest ever player. But it was Chelsea who moved fastest and hardest, beating Barcelona and the rest of Europe's elite to his signature while he was still a teenager playing in Brazil. And he kept proving them right with the ball at his feet. On his farewell tour with Palmeiras in a match against their fierce rivals Botafogo, he collected the ball on the right, skipped past 2 defenders, played a quick 1-2, slipped the ball through a 3rd defender's legs, and then chipped the goalkeeper with ice-cold composure. A single piece of individual brilliance that looked less like a teenager learning his trade and more like a finished superstar toying with grown men. But here is the detail that separates Estevao from 100 other hyped Brazilian wingers who came before him. He hates the comparison. He has said it openly, being called Little Messi since the age of 10 was not a gift, it was a weight. "I confess that I didn't like it," he admitted. "I don't like comparisons. Think about how unusual that is. Most teenagers would dream of that nickname. They would put it on a t-shirt and sign autographs with it." Estevao wanted it gone because he understood something most young players never grasp until it is too late. Every time the world calls you the next Messi, it is quietly measuring you against the impossible and setting you up to be called a failure for being merely brilliant. So while the internet argued about whether he was the heir to a legend, Estevao made a quiet decision. He only wanted to be one thing himself. "Me being Estevao," he said, "is very good." That one sentence is the entire blueprint of his career. And now the uncomfortable truth, because this is exactly where most of these stories quietly fall apart. Brazil is a graveyard of next big things. For every Neymar who actually makes it, there are dozens of teenagers who were just as hyped, just as gifted, and whose names you have completely forgot. The pressure, the money, the agents, the early fame, the injuries, Brazilian football has a brutal habit of building wonder kids up and then watching them disappear. Even Luiz Felipe Scolari, the World Cup-winning coach who managed both Brazil and Chelsea, knew the danger. When he was asked about Estevao, he did not start with the talent. He started with the temperament. He draws the attention of those who work for the national team because of the way he behaves, Scolari said, as a player and as a person. And his advice to the boy was simple and revealing: keep being bold, because talent was never going to be Estevao's problem. Surviving the hype that came with it, that was the real test. And the Premier League is its own specific, merciless kind of test. It is the most physical league on earth, where slight, skillful wingers arriving from South America are routinely kicked, crowded and bullied out of matches before they ever truly settle. A 5'6" teenager stepping out of the Brazilian sunshine into the cold, relentless grind of English football is not a guaranteed success story. It is a coin flip that history has lost as often as it has won. For every flair player who adapted, there is another who was simply too lightweight, too young, too far from home, and quietly faded into a cautionary tale. Estevao was walking straight into that gauntlet. So did he survive it? Did he prove that the money Chelsea were willing to pay was worth every penny? Or did he become just another gorgeous highlight reel that quietly led nowhere? Before I show you the moment that answered that question for good, the goal that made his future teammates shake their heads in disbelief, do me one quick favor. If you're enjoying this and you want more deep dives on the kids who are about to take over world football, tap that subscribe button right now. It genuinely helps this channel more than you could know, and it is completely free. Done? Good. Because what happened next at that tournament changed the entire conversation around this kid. Summer 2025, the big Intercontinental Club tournament. Palmeiras against Chelsea, Estevao's present against his future on the same pitch at the same time. The Blues had already bought him. They expected to watch a promising teenager find his feet. Instead, they watched him take their game apart. Estevao collected the ball out on the right flank, took it in his stride, and from an angle that should have been impossible, curled it past the Chelsea goalkeeper and into the far corner. One English broadcaster described it in a single word, Messi-esque, which was almost too perfect, given it was the very nickname he had spent his whole life trying to escape. And here's the part that should worry every defender he is about to face. After the match, Cole Palmer, Chelsea's own golden boy, one of the most dangerous young attackers in Europe, walked straight up to him, congratulated him, and said simply, "We can see he is a top player. Not he could be. Not one day, maybe. We can see it." Now, 13 goals, 9 assists, 3 Champions League starts scored in, more than 30 goal involvements before the age of 18. At that exact moment, the numbers stopped being statistics and started being a warning shot to the rest of the world. And here's the one more thing that should genuinely send a chill down the spine of every defender in the Premier League. Estevao is not the finished article. He is the rough draft. He arrived in England as a teenager who has barely begun lifting weights, who is still filling out that slight 5'6" frame, who is still learning English, still adapting to a new league, still building a whole new life 4,000 miles from the only home he has ever known. The 13 goals, the assists, the audacity to embarrass a Chelsea defense, all of that came from the version of him that had not yet trained a single full season under elite European sports science. Some analysts have actually stopped comparing him to Messi altogether, and started comparing him to Rodrigo of Real Madrid instead, a left-footed version, all fluid changes of pace, like a player who runs on water rather than grass. The terrifying part is not what he has already done. It is the simple, undeniable fact that he did all of it before the real work even began. There was even a piece of poetry hanging over that summer tournament. Palmeiras shared the same competition as Inter Miami, the club of Lionel Messi himself. The boy they called Little Messi on the same continent in the same tournament as the actual Messi, the original and the so-called heir at opposite ends of their careers, one a 30-something legend on a farewell lap, the other a teenager just getting started. Whether or not the two ever shared a pitch, the symbolism was impossible to miss. Estevao had spent a decade running from a shadow, and football kept drawing him closer and closer to the man casting it. But strip away the transfer fees and the highlight reels and the nickname he never asked for, and you are left with something very simple and very human. A goalkeeper's son from a shoemaking town in Sao Paulo who picked up an impossible nickname at the age of 10, carried it like a backpack full of bricks for years, and somehow decided that the only way to win was to stop trying to be the next anybody. Whether Estevao ends up a genuine Ballon d'Or contender or simply a very, very good Premier League winger, he has already done the single hardest thing a prodigy can do. He kept his head while the entire world lost theirs over him. So here is my question for you, and I honestly want to know what you think. Drop it in the comments right now. Is Estevao going to grow bigger than the legend they named him after, or does that nickname, Messinho, eventually become the heaviest thing he ever has to carry? Tell me below because I read them. And if you want to see who is next on our list of teenagers about to take over the beautiful game, you already know exactly what to do.